Chapter 7. The next week was the 4th of July. It fell on a Thursday, so Michael decided to take Wednesday and Friday off as well so he could spend the 4th with his family. Every year, his mother and all his aunts, uncles, and cousins gathered at his grandmother's lake house up at Lake Texacoma. His grandmother had passed away nearly 10 years earlier, but per her request, they kept the lake house in the family. She told Michael about a year or so after her death that it was because she couldn't stand the thought of anyone else living there. Wednesday morning, he woke up early, packed a small suitcase that would last him 2 nights, and then, after locking his apartment, made his way down the stairs. He tried not to look at Kate's door as he passed, but he still saw it out of the corner of his eye. He hadn't seen nor heard from her since he tried to ask her out to dinner a week before. Brink had offered to spy on her again, but Michael had told him not to. Of course, that didn't necessarily mean that it hadn't happened. As he loaded his bag into the back seat of his car, he heard a door slam from up above. He glanced around and was stunned to see Kate, capering down the stairs, wearing a yellow swimsuit cover-up and carrying a towel, a bottle of water, and a book. She had her hair tied up in a ponytail that bounced against the back of her neck as she descended. Before Michael had the chance to duck inside his car, she looked up and stopped dead in her tracks. "Hey," Michael offered tentatively. "Hey," she echoed and tucked a loose lock of hair behind her ear. "How are you?" "Not bad." "Are things at the library still hectic?" She grinned. Michael smiled too. He was glad to have her teasing him again. "Yeah, sort of," he replied. "How about you? How's your job?" "As of right now, I don't really have one. The lady who had hired us for the next week decided on Monday that we were incompetent and we didn't have enough respect for her vision, so she let us go." "She sounds like fun." "Oh, you have no idea," Kate told him. "I guess it all worked out for the best. If she'd kept us, I would have had to work today and Friday. Now I get the whole week off." "Do you have any plans for the 4th? "Just watching fireworks. We'll probably have hamburgers or something beforehand." "Sounds good." "How about you?" "My family has a lake house up on Lake Texacoma, so I'm going to spend today and tomorrow there, but I'll be home on Friday morning." As soon as the words were out of his mouth, he realized it sounded like he was assuring her that he'd be home soon, as though she were concerned that he wouldn't be. Why did he always have to sound like such an idiot? Fortunately, she didn't seem to notice, or if she had, she politely overlooked it. "I'm so jealous. I love lakes." "I'm not a fan," Michael admitted without thinking, for reasons he didn't want to think about. Lakes were usually crawling with restless spirits. The only ghost he didn't mind was his grandmother, who preferred to spend all of her time sitting on her old porch swing and watching the sun rise and set and rise again over the water. "Really? But there's so much to do. Swimming and kayaking and fishing." Michael shrugged. "Lakes are dirty." "Whatever," Kate said flippantly. "Hey, listen, I'm sorry I was kind of distant last week. I've had a lot on my mind." "Oh, no, I completely understand. I've had stuff on my mind, too," he added lamely. "Everything's okay, isn't it? I mean, is Gavin all right?" "I don't know," Kate sighed. "He says he's feeling better, and he does have days where he seems it, but he's basically been on a downward spiral since his birthday party. I'm not even sure he should go to see the fireworks, but I know how much he wants to. And he's been cooped up for so long. He really needs to get out." Michael had never considered himself particularly astute, but he couldn't help but feel there was something she wasn't telling him. "Are you okay? I mean, it sounds like you've been under a lot of stress." Kate shrugged. "I'm worried about Gavin, but that's nothing new. I haven't really been sleeping well, but I think it's because I'm still getting used to the apartment." "Are you still liking it here?" "Yeah, the apartment's great." Again, her answer sounded vague. "What is it?" Michael asked, hoping he wasn't pushing her too far. She averted eye contact, like she was trying to decide whether or not to confide in him. Finally, she looked up. "If I ask you something, will you promise not to think I'm crazy?" "No. I mean, yes. I mean," he fumbled pathetically. "I mean, I'd never think you were crazy." "Smooth." Thankfully, Kate didn't seem at all fazed by his less-than-stellar people skills, as she looked him in the eye and asked, "Do you believe in ghosts?" Michael had been anticipating a variety of strange questions, but for some reason, he hadn't been expecting that. Rather than lie on the spot as he normally would have done, he froze up like a puddle in a snowstorm and felt all the blood drain from his face. While he racked his brain for an appropriate response, a new voice, loud and irksome, broke the silence. "Of course he believes in ghosts. Doesn't everybody?" "Oh, no," Michael muttered as a man wearing dark denim jeans, a black t-shirt, and an arrogant smirk sauntered over to them. Everything about him screamed obnoxious, from his preppy, dirty blonde hair that made him look like he was getting ready for a 7th-grade dance, to his stupid green Converse sneakers that were probably at least 10 years old by now. "How are you doing, Mikey?" he asked. Before Michael could tell him to get lost, Kate made a strange noise that sounded like a small dog with an upset stomach, and dropped everything she was holding. "Oh my God, you're Luke Rayner!" she exclaimed, her voice about 10 pitches higher than it normally was. Michael stared at her in horror. Luke, on the other hand, heaved a sigh dripping with false modesty and self-satisfaction. "Guilty," he replied. Then, with a smug grin, he took her hand and kissed it. She squealed. Luke turned to Michael. "She's cute. I like her." Michael scowled at him. Of all the times he could come barging back into his life, of course Luke Rayner would choose to show up just as he was trying to make things right with Kate. "What do you want?" Michael asked. "I'm back in town for the 4th, and I thought while I was here I'd drop in and say hi to my buddy," Luke answered. "Super," Michael remarked lightly. Kate, on the other hand, gaped at him with wide, starstruck eyes. "You're friends with Luke Rayner?" Friends is such a strong word. "How could you not tell me?" she demanded. "Because I didn't think you'd know or care who he was." "Oh, Mikey, how you underestimate my extensive fan base," Luke said, clapping a hand onto his shoulder. "Right, because ghost hunting shows are so mainstream, I should assume every pretty girl I meet has a secret shrine to you hidden away in her closet." "Uh-oh, sounds like someone's a little jealous," Luke remarked in an irritating sing-song voice before turning his attention back to Kate. "So, what's your name, lovely?" Kate Avery, and I love your show. I watch it all the time. You were just so wonderful," she rambled, batting her eyelashes and gazing up at Luke like he was some sort of celestial being. "Thank you, sweetheart," Luke smiled, basking in her flattery. "It's all because of fans like you that we're able to do what we do." Michael rolled his eyes. How did anyone take him seriously? "You know, I actually died once," Kate told him, looking oddly proud. That caught Michael's attention. "Is that so?" Luke asked. "You never told me that," Michael said. "I didn't think that it would impress you," she replied. "Was it after your car accident?" "Yep. Flatlined for 4 minutes before they revived me." "And did you have an experience with the afterlife?" Luke asked. "I think I did, but it's pretty blurry," Kate said. "They pumped me full of so many drugs, I don't have too many solid memories. My brother's convinced my brain will never be the same." "I don't know what he's talking about. Your brain seems just fine to me," Luke smiled. Kate looked positively elated. "This is just so cool. I can't believe you're here," she gushed. "Will you sign my book?" "Oh, God, you bought his book?" Michael groaned. After the wild success of his stupid show, Luke Rayner had penned a memoir of his lifelong obsession with all things paranormal. Like the show, the book had been well received by women between the ages of 15 and 55. By the critics, not so much. "Of course I will. It'd be my pleasure," Luke responded with a cheeky grin. "You know, Mikey, I'm proud of you. It's about time you found a girl, especially one with such good taste." "Well, actually, we're not dating," Kate interrupted him. Luke raised an eyebrow. "No?" he asked, eyeing her with renewed interest. "No, I'm very single," she replied emphatically. Michael watched, incredulous. How could a smart, level-headed woman like Kate be reduced to a silly, fawning fangirl by an arrogant tool like Luke Rayner? Well, lucky me, Luke winked. Kate looked like she was about to faint. Okay, well, it's been fun, but you need to go, Michael blurted before he could stop himself. Going somewhere? Luke asked, observing the suitcase in Michael's back seat and showing no intention of departing. As a matter of fact, yes, and I need to leave soon, so there's really no reason for you to stick around. Au contraire. I think I've found a perfectly good reason to stick around. Luke glanced back at Kate. What do you say, gorgeous? Are you doing anything today? My schedule is completely open, she answered breathlessly. What do you say to dinner? I know a great Italian place downtown. Very expensive, of course. Michael clenched his jaw. Please say no, please say no, please say no. I'd love to, Kate beamed. Great. I'll swing by and get you around 7:30. Does that sound good? It sounds perfect. Excellent. Why don't I give you my number and you can text me yours? My phone is charging back at my folks' place. Michael knew Luke had grown up in Dallas and that his parents still lived there, but he hadn't known that was where Luke stayed when he came back to visit. It made him feel slightly better about Kate's impending date with him, but not much. Sure, let me run and get mine. I left it up in the apartment. Without bothering to collect her fallen towel, book, or water bottle, Kate dashed upstairs and across the landing, leaving Michael alone with Luke. She's something, isn't she? Luke asked. What was her name? Kaylee? Michael felt his usually mild temper flare. It's Kate, he snapped. Why are you doing this? She's a pretty girl. I haven't been on a date in a while. Plus, I know you want her, so that's like a bonus. For the second time that morning, Michael was rendered speechless. This time, however, it was out of anger rather than surprise. You can't really blame me. Knowing you, you probably haven't even asked her out on a date. You can't take girls like her for granted. You've got to let them know you want them. Otherwise, someone else is going to swoop in. Michael wanted to tell him that the last thing he wanted or needed was dating advice from a guy whose last girlfriend was Teresa Von Locke, the lead singer of the gothic rock band The Necromaniacs, and known by her fans as the Queen of the Dead. However, a door slamming somewhere above them distracted him. Seconds later, Kate came bouncing down the stairs. Here it is, she announced and handed her cell phone to Luke. Thank you, sweetheart. Luke took the phone and punched his number in. Text me. Oh, I will, she smiled. Well, I guess I better be off. I have a bit of editing to do for my new project, but I will definitely see you tonight, he promised Kate as he turned to leave. Have a good trip, Mikey. Bite me, Michael muttered under his breath. Bye, Luke. See you tonight. Kate waved. Once he disappeared, she turned to Michael. Oh my God, I can't believe I just met Luke Rayner. How do you know him? We met a few years ago. He came around wanting to film because of the curse? Kate added. You heard? Our downstairs neighbor mentioned it to me. Do you believe in it? I'm not sure, Michael answered carefully. Anyway, that's how I know him. There was a little more to it than that. The truth was that Luke had shown up one day about a year and a half before the Discovery Channel picked up his series, asking about the building. He'd heard all the stories about the curse of the Riverview apartment complex. And being the young, enthusiastic paranormal investigator that he was, he decided to check it out. When he'd first come knocking on his door, Michael knew he couldn't turn down Luke's request to set up a night vision camera and 3 digital recorders without raising suspicion. The next morning should have been the last time Michael ever saw him. Unfortunately, Luke was so eager to set up his equipment downstairs where a woman had reported hearing mysterious voices singing in her bathroom that he'd forgotten one of his digital recorders. By the time he returned for it, it had already captured an extensive conversation between Michael and Brink. To the untrained ear, it almost sounded like Michael was talking to himself. Luke, however, had been able to decipher Brink's voice through the static. Michael held on to his claim that he was on the telephone and that any voice Luke may have heard must have been recorded through the earpiece. But Luke simply didn't buy it. He knew what he'd heard, and he wouldn't rest until Michael admitted not only that he'd been talking to a ghost, but that the ghost was talking back, and Michael could hear every word he said. The only person in the world to know Michael's secret, and it had to be Luke Rayner, ghost hunter, reality television star, and douchebag extraordinaire. He tried everything from begging to bribery to get Michael to join the cemetery tours team. Why? Michael hadn't a clue. Luke Rayner already had all the success, money, and star power he could ever ask for. He clearly didn't need Michael. "This is just so cool," Kate repeated. "I've never met a celebrity before. You don't mind, do you? You know, that I go out with him tonight?" Yes, he thought. Aloud, he said, "No, not at all. Go." He paused to clear his throat. Why did his voice have to crack now? "Go have a good time." "Thanks, Michael." Much to his surprise, Kate threw her arms around his shoulders. "You're a good friend." "I'm an idiot," he thought drearily as he returned her embrace. "Don't mention it." Chapter 8. "You've got to be kidding me." Kate tried to ignore her brother as she applied her mascara, but it was difficult to do so with him hovering over her shoulder. Their bathroom was supposed to be big enough so that two people could stand comfortably in front of the mirror, but with Gavin practically breathing down her neck, they probably could have squeezed in a third. "Well, I'm not, so get over it." "You know, I can believe he has friends here in Dallas. I can even believe he has friends in this complex. But honestly, why would he ask you on a date?" "Gee, thanks, Gav. You want to tell me how ugly this dress makes me look too?" Kate snapped. "It's not like it's a real date." "So why are you going?" "Hello, he's Luke Rayner." "Yeah, I got that," Gavin scowled. "How do you know this guy isn't up to anything?" "Like what? You think he wants to kidnap me?" "I'm just saying, I don't think it's a good idea for you to be going out with some guy you don't know." "Well, technically..." "No, stalking him on Twitter does not count." "Fine," Kate huffed. "You know, I spent more time with him than I would have if I'd met him speed dating." "Not making me feel better, sis." "Well, I tried." Kate shrugged as she dropped her backup mascara and lipstick into her purse. Then she pulled out her phone to check the time. 7:28. Luke would be there any minute. She grabbed her favorite bottle of perfume and spritzed it onto her wrists and neck. Gavin took a few steps away from her to avoid any residual spray. He must have finally realized he wasn't going to talk her out of going, because he left shortly thereafter, but not before casting her one last look of blatant disapproval. Knowing she didn't have much time, Kate took one last look at her reflection. She had to admit, she looked pretty good. She'd chosen a summer dress, and she tied her hair up with a few strands falling loosely into her eyes. With just an extra touch of a smoky eyeshadow and a natural shade of lipstick, she finally felt worthy of a night with Luke Rayner. As if on cue, someone knocked on the door, sending her heart into a frenzy. "I'll get it," she announced and scampered to the entry hall. She pulled the door open to reveal Luke Rayner, looking more beautiful than he ever had on her television screen. He wore the same dark jeans from earlier, but he'd exchanged his t-shirt for a button-down collared shirt. She'd noticed earlier that he wasn't nearly as tall as he seemed on television, but with his rugged jawline and big forest-colored eyes, he was still the handsomest guy she'd ever seen. He smiled at her and greeted her with a cheerful, "Hello, gorgeous." "Hi," she squeaked. "Stop it, Kate. You're 24, not 14. For heaven's sake, he's just a person." "Hello." Gavin suddenly appeared beside her, trying to look as important and intimidating as he could in his unkempt state. "Is this your brother?" Luke asked Kate. "Gavin, how are you doing?" Gavin extended his hand. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a friendly gesture. Kate, however, knew her brother. He didn't really do friendly. Great, thanks. I'm Luke. I know. Gavin frowned. So why the sudden interest in my little sister?
Gavin!
Kate hissed. To Luke, she said,
You'll have to excuse him. He's not really a people person.
No harm done, Luke assured her. So, are you ready for the best night of your life? Kate laughed, but she could practically feel Gavin tense beside her.
Absolutely. Let me grab my purse,
she replied. She turned to her brother.
Don't talk,
she ordered before sprinting off to retrieve her purse from her bedroom. Once they'd finally made it out the door, Kate realized just how nervous she was. She was alone, with Luke Rayner. What was she supposed to say to him? Luke, however, was so outgoing and relaxed that she soon found herself talking to him as though he were one of her oldest friends. Throughout the car ride, he'd brought his more modest vehicle, a brand new Ferrari. He asked her about herself, where she'd gone to school, what she did for a living, what hobbies she enjoyed. She realized it was a little pointless to ask him such things after having read his book and seen every single episode of Cemetery Tours. She already knew that he had grown up in both Houston and Dallas, and that he'd first become interested in the paranormal when, at the age of 6, he saw the apparition of his grandfather standing in his living room. She knew he'd gone to a community college in the area for a few semesters before dropping out to pursue paranormal investigation full-time, and that before he earned his time slot on the Discovery Channel, he'd made his living as a bartender in Deep Ellum. That's where he'd met Gail Marsh and J.T. Sawyer, 2 of his fellow investigators. Gail worked with him at the bar, and J.T. was a patron who'd stop in every Friday night after he'd finished his job as a busboy at one of downtown's most prestigious hotels. They began ghost hunting on weekends, and by the time Peter Jameson, Gail's tech friend from college, had joined the team, they had already collected a handful of pretty spooky disembodied voices on their digital recorders. Together, they put together a compilation of their video evidence, which included a few shadow figures and one solid full-bodied apparition, and began showing it off to anyone who would watch. After receiving a lot of positive feedback, they decided to see if they could find an agent who would be willing to watch their video. That had eventually led to a contract with the Discovery Channel, and the rest was history. The entire crew had been living out near Los Angeles ever since. Instead of asking about his professional life, Kate asked,
So, what do you like to do when you're not investigating?
More investigating, he grinned. There's actually a place outside of Waxahachie I'm thinking of checking out while I'm here.
Really?
Kate asked. Yeah, it's called the Old Bluebonnet Ranch. There's a cemetery right on the edge of the property where a lot of apparitions have been sighted. I think I'll go see if it lives up to all the hype.
That sounds so cool. I've always wanted to go on a real ghost hunt.
Why don't you come with me? Luke offered.
Are you serious?
Absolutely. I could always use an extra hand, especially since my crew isn't with me.
Where are they?
Kate asked, her head still spinning at the thought of going on a real ghost hunt with Luke Rayner. Peter and JT are spending the week in New York, and Gail is in Reno with her new boy toy.
You're the only one who came home?
Kate asked. Luke shrugged. I wanted to spend time with my folks. I don't really get to see them a lot. As he spoke, Kate realized that this was a side of Luke Rayner that most people never got to see. He always gave the impression he was a hotshot superstar paranormal investigator. She never expected he'd be the type to fly home and spend time with his parents, while his friends partied it up in New York and Reno. So, how long have you and Mikey been friends?
Not very long,
Kate replied.
How do you know him?
She remembered what Michael had told her, but he really hadn't gone into very much detail. Oh, you know. I heard there was a cursed apartment complex. Thought it might be fun to investigate. My friends didn't think it was worth it, but I was curious, so I took my camera and a few digital recorders.
Did you find anything?
Well, that depends. How easily do you scare? He asked. Kate smiled.
Don't worry. I already know my apartment is haunted, she assured him.
In that case, there's definitely something there, Luke said. I caught several disembodied voices and a couple unexplained mists, and even a few intelligent responses.
Wow. So it really is the whole building?
It really is the whole building. The question is, why? He asked, sounding like a voice actor on a kid's Halloween program, as he parallel parked his beloved Ferrari alongside the busy downtown sidewalk. Once they climbed out of the car, he offered her his arm and led her down the block to a fancy Italian restaurant called De Luca's. 2 potted trees glittering with colorless Christmas lights stood on either side of the door, which a greeting host opened for them. Buona serata. Welcome to De Luca's. Grazie, my man, Luke grinned. Reservation for Rainer? For 2? Yes, sir.
Right this way.
Kate knew she was ogling as they followed the host through the restaurant, but she couldn't help it. De Luca's was beautiful, full of classy artwork, ritzy furnishings, and crystal chandeliers. The lighting was dim, and the walls were the color of garnets and decorated with intricate designs, the color of buried treasure. Passing by their fellow diners, elegant and sophisticated couples sipping wine by candlelight, Kate realized just how underdressed and out of place she was in her Target brand summer dress. Fortunately, no one paid her or Luke the slightest bit of attention. Finally, the young greeting host directed them to a semi-secluded table near the window.
Is this satisfactory?
He asked. Very. Thanks a lot, Luke replied.
Anything else I can do for you, just let me know.
He disappeared, and before Kate had time to appreciate the smell of fresh marinara or the soft Italian mood music, a waiter arrived to take their drink orders. How about some wine? Luke asked Kate.
Great.
Red or white? Kate bit the inside of her cheek as she felt the waiter's eyes drift from Luke to her. She had no idea which one she liked, and she'd left her note cards at home.
Whatever you prefer,
she finally answered. How about the bottle of Cabernet? Luke asked. Kate wasn't sure she knew one wine from another any better than the names of the colors. Still, she didn't want to seem naive or childish by asking him to describe it.
Sounds good.
They chatted casually about the restaurant, their favorite television shows, other than cemetery tours, and all the things they liked about Dallas while they waited for their drinks. The waiter returned quickly with 2 goblets of ice water and a dark bottle, which he uncorked and poured into their glasses. The wine was the same color as the walls, and Kate realized it wasn't the kind she was used to drinking. Cheers. Luke held up his glass. Kate raised her glass and clinked it against his. Then she took a sip and pulled back, grimacing. Luke laughed. You okay?
It's a little bitter,
she answered. If you don't like it, I can get you a bottle of Chardonnay. You might like that a little better.
At the risk of sounding completely uncultured, what kind is Chardonnay?
White, Luke replied, grinning at her.
Is that the lighter kind?
She asked. Luke raised a confused eyebrow. Briefly, Kate filled him in on her color anomia. Interesting. Luke looked thoughtful once she'd finished. You can't identify colors at all?
Not by their names, Kate replied. It's weird, but the doctors told me that every brain injury is unique.
Just like snowflakes. Luke sounded so profound that Kate burst into a fit of giggles.
Exactly,
she said, and took a sip of water. Does it bother you to talk about it? Your accident, I mean.
No.
So what happened? Kate recounted the whole story to him, how she went for a drive in the snow and wound up with the entire front half of her car smashed up against a tree. And is this where you had your experience? He asked, referring to her 4 minutes of death.
No, I didn't flatline until they had me in the ambulance. Lucky for me, too. That's how they managed to revive me, she explained.
Do you remember any of it? Kate tried to assemble the broken pieces of her memory before waking up in the hospital.
This is gonna sound bizarre, but I think I was in a Starbucks.
If Luke Raynor's face was any indication, he hadn't been expecting that. Really? He asked.
Yeah, like I said, it's all pretty blurry. I didn't even start to remember it until a few weeks after I woke up. That's when it all started coming back in bits and flashes. But from what I can piece together, I opened my eyes and there was snow everywhere. I was literally in the middle of nowhere, just surrounded by snow. I had no idea where I was or where I was going. Not even sure I remembered my own name. Then I was in a coffee house. I guess I just figured that was the place to be during a snowstorm. Now Luke was smiling at her. The part I remember vividly, though, was not being able to smell anything once I got there. That scared me. It must have been right before they got my heart going because I began to panic. I think I even heard one of the paramedics' voices as they pulled me back. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the hospital 3 weeks later.
Wow, Luke said. Forgive me if I seem creepy to you, but I love that you had that experience.
You love that I died for 4 minutes?
Kate laughed. No, I love that you can say with certainty that after your body died, you continued to exist. You know, that's what we're trying to do on cemetery tours. Give people some reassurance that death isn't the end. That even if you've lost a loved one, even if the pain is still there, there's at least some peace knowing that you'll see them again.
I like that too,
Kate told him. You know, you said something else earlier that interested me.
What's that?
You said you already knew that your apartment is haunted. Why did you say that?
It's more of a feeling than anything,
Kate answered carefully. Before she knew it, though, she'd told him about everything. The break-in, the footsteps, the sensation of being watched, Gavin's illness, his steadfast refusal to believe in anything supernatural. It all came tumbling out before she could stop it. Luke listened intently, nodding every so often, and didn't speak until she'd finished her story. Well, I don't know about your brother, but that sounds like a Class A haunting to me, he told her. It is a little strange, though, that he's the only one that's been affected. As he spoke, a memory from moving day suddenly surfaced, and Kate saw Michael stumbling to get out of Gavin's room as his health rapidly deteriorated.
It did happen to one other person,
she said, and told him about Michael. That seemed to strike Luke's interest more than anything. So, Mikey's been to your apartment?
Yeah.
Did he say anything? Or have you said anything to him about the haunting?
No, I didn't want him to think I was crazy, Kate explained, blushing slightly.
Why? She was on a date with Luke Raynor. She shouldn't worry or care about what Michael Sinclair thought of her. Oh, I doubt he'd think you were crazy, Luke said with the air of one who knew more than he was letting on.
Does Michael think his apartment is haunted too?
Oh, he knows it is. In fact, I captured my best EVPs in his living room. EVP, the technical term for a disembodied voice captured on a digital recorder, stood for electronic voice phenomena. Kate had learned that watching cemetery tours.
Really?
Yeah, you should ask him about it.
I will,
Kate said. In the meantime, why don't you and I try a little experiment?
What kind of experiment?
I think after dinner we should run back to my folks' place, grab some equipment, and conduct an EVP session with your ghost friend in your living room. It can be your indoctrination into the world of paranormal investigating. What do you say? Chapter 9. Michael was not having the time of his life. So whoever was singing that song on the radio about hoping he was, well, he could take a hike. Since he knew that being at the lake wouldn't do the trick, he had hoped that being around his family, some of whom he hadn't seen in a long time, would cheer him up. That wasn't helping either. It was mostly Uncle Carl's fault. Nosy Uncle Carl, who asked him a multitude of questions about his personal life, and the answers to which all made him sound like a total loser. "So, Michael, what are you doing with your life, boy?" "Shelving books at the library." "For money?" "Yes." "Have any plans for something a little more prestigious?" "No, I like it there." "Well, enough about work. Did you find yourself a lady yet?" "Not yet." "Well, you better get a move on that, boy. What are you now, 35? 27, but thanks for that additional kick in the gut, Michael thought miserably. He hated to be the mopey one at the party, but he just couldn't bring himself to have a good time. And it was all because he knew that right now, Kate was probably having a fantastic night out with him. Stupid Luke Rayner and his stupid bad boy charisma. Michael tried to at least put on a happy face for his mother, who arrived about an hour later than he did. As usual, she presented herself with natural warmth and grace, though Michael couldn't help but notice the new strands of gray amidst her dark brown curls as she greeted him with a long embrace.
"Oh, it's so good to see you, sweetheart,"
she told him. "You too, Mom," Michael replied, breathing in the familiar scent of her floral perfume. It reminded him of joyful family gatherings from his childhood, and he found comfort in the memories. Still, his mother could tell he had something heavy on his mind. "You want to talk about it?" she asked. "It's nothing," he assured her.
"I've heard that before,"
she sighed. Michael knew it frustrated her that he rarely opened up about his personal life, but he wasn't sure she'd be any happier if he did. For that matter, he wasn't sure he would be either. How pathetic would it sound having to tell her that the girl he liked was out on a date with the ghost prince of primetime? Even worse would be having to explain that he'd inadvertently introduced them. But worst of all would be confessing why he knew Luke Rayner in the first place and why, 3 years later, he was still coming around. "How are you?" Michael asked her.
"Tired,"
she admitted. "I know I look it too." "No, you look beautiful, like always." "Oh, I raised you so well." She smiled fondly as Uncle Carl came thundering across the yard towards her. "There's my little sister. There's my little Diane," he bellowed as he threw his arms around her. She winced as he squeezed her against his beer belly, but she returned his hug nevertheless. Michael wasn't sure if it was a characteristic of all mothers, but Diane Sinclair had a gift, a natural way with people. She was able to see the good in anyone and everyone, and she never had one mean thing to say. She had a way of making everyone feel loved and respected, and everyone loved and respected her in return. While the family congregated around Diane, Michael meandered over to the shore. The sun was just beginning to set, pouring golden light through the trees, illuminating their silhouettes and casting long shadows across the water. Although he preferred to avoid lakes, he couldn't deny that it was a peaceful atmosphere. Or it would have been if it were not for all the drifting spirits. Some of them he recognized, like the old man who wandered from boat to boat. Sometimes he seemed content to just sit and watch the water. Other times he acted like he was searching for something, maybe a favorite fishing rod or an old pocket watch. Then there was a young woman who haunted the dock across the lake. He'd seen her for years, pacing back and forth across the same dock. Was she waiting for someone? Or did she genuinely not know that she could leave that spot? Others were new, like the teenage girl screaming hysterically, begging for someone to help her find her lost dog. Michael knew he should have gone to talk to her. He was the only one that could. And yet he didn't. No matter how guilty he felt, he couldn't bring himself to approach her. He tried to tell himself that it was for the best. The living weren't meant to get involved with the dead. When they did, they disrupted the delicate balance that kept the universe in order. That was his excuse, anyway. Aside from the ghosts, however, the lake was actually a great place to be. The family's 2-story lake house, wooden with white shutters and a swing hanging from the tree in the front yard, was as homey as ever. As usual, his grandmother watched her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren from the swing on the porch. She glanced over at Michael and smiled at him. She knew he would come to see her once everyone else was asleep. Until then, he'd do his best to pretend he had nothing more on his mind than how pleasant an evening it turned out to be. On the list of places Kate had never expected to see with her own eyes, the inside of Luke Raynor's parents' house had fallen somewhere between Antarctica and the dark side of the moon. They'd stopped by after dinner to collect some of Luke's equipment to take back to her apartment. His parents, Dave and Susan, were as nice as could be. They lived in a modest house, and Kate was surprised to learn that despite their son's success, Dave still worked his day job as a plumber. Susan had, however, quit her job and had since divided her free time between her two passions, quilting and blogging. They welcomed Kate and offered her a drink while Luke rummaged through his bags for a digital recorder, a night vision camera, and a substantial supply of batteries. Once he had everything he needed, he wished his parents good night and promised he wouldn't be home too late, which Kate found adorable, and only slightly disappointing. Back at her apartment, Kate wasn't surprised to find Gavin fast asleep on the couch. She shook his shoulder and whispered,
"Gav, you can go to bed now. I'm home safe and sound."
"Huh?" He mumbled, only semi-conscious.
"I'm back. You can go to bed."
"Oh." He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and looked at her. When he noticed Luke standing over her shoulder, he frowned. "He's still here." Kate swatted his arm. "Ow!" he moaned.
"Yes, he's still here. Be nice," she scolded. "We're going to do an EVP session in here, so get out."
"What the hell is an EVP session?"
"You know what it is. We're going to ask our ghost questions and listen to the responses on the digital recorder."
"Kate, how many times... You know what? Go ahead. Knock yourself out. I'm going to bed."
"Good. Good night."
Kate took his seat on the couch as Luke began setting up his night vision camera. Gavin gave one final shake of his head before disappearing into his room. "All right, we're about ready. Do you want to hit the lights?" Luke asked. Kate did as he asked, feeling excited, nervous, and, she hated to admit it, a little scared. What if they actually did make contact with whoever or whatever was inside their apartment? Would the nighttime anxiety become even worse than before? And what about Gavin? Once all the lights were off, Kate began to have second thoughts. The room seemed much smaller in the dark, and far too quiet. Slowly, the tiny hairs on the back of her neck began to stand on end, and she scurried back to the couch.
"Are you sure this is a good idea?"
she asked Luke. "Whatever is in this apartment is already attached to you. There isn't a whole lot we could do to make things worse."
"What if we make it angry?"
Luke was silent for a few long moments before he finally answered. "I don't want to scare you, but I think it's already angry." Kate shivered.
"How can you tell?"
she asked. "Working around spiritual energy for so long, you sort of develop a feel for it. You learn to detect different emotions. You can usually tell when something wants to beat the crap out of you."
"Is that what he wants?"
she whispered, hoping he couldn't hear the newborn terror in her voice. "I don't think so. I think he just wants someone to talk to," Luke replied. "And that's what we're going to give him." He handed her the digital recorder, a rectangular device about the same size as her iPod. "Would you like to do the honors?"
"I don't know how it works,"
she confessed. "You just have to push this button," he showed her.
"I think you should just hold on to it. You're the expert."
It really was for the best. Her fingers were so trembly that she would probably drop it, break it, and then the whole session would be over. "Fine," he sighed playfully. "I know you've seen how we do this on TV, but just relax. Talk, ask questions. After a few questions, we'll play it back and see if we hear anything."
"Right,"
she whispered. "Okay, here we go." Although she couldn't see anything, she heard the faint click of a button being pressed. "Hello?" he began. "If you can hear me, my name is Luke. This is Kate. We just want to talk to you." He paused, waited a few seconds, and continued. If you're here, can you make a noise? Or say something into our recorder? Anything to let us know you're here. Kate held her breath in anticipation, but they were met with silence. Luke pressed another button. Let's just see if we got anything yet. Kate could hear the recorder rewinding, and suddenly, her curiosity outweighed her apprehension. Luke hit the play button and his voice came through, sounding digitized and enhanced. Hello. If you can hear me, my name is Luke. This is Kate. We just want to talk to you. If you're here, can you make a noise? Or say something into our recorder? Anything to let us know you're here. Kate strained her ears to hear anything through the static and noise behind Luke's voice, but there was nothing. Don't get discouraged. It takes a lot of energy for spirits to come through. Luke stopped the playback and resumed recording. If you're here, we'd really like to talk to you. So if you have something to say, use my energy. Use my camera's energy. They sat in silence for a few more moments before Luke muttered, Whoa.
Are you okay?
Kate asked. Yeah, I just got dizzy, he replied. Was that you draining my energy? Kate had seen almost the exact same phenomena on his show. She hated to admit it, but she'd always wondered if maybe he was exaggerating a little for the camera. Now, however, she wasn't sure. Luke stopped the device again and played back what they'd just recorded. Again, his was the only voice they heard. You know, since he or she has been attached to you for so long, they might respond more to you, Luke told her. Why don't you try?
Okay.
Kate cleared her throat as Luke pressed the record button.
Hello? Is anyone there?
She asked.
My name is Kate. What's yours?
Luke stopped and rewound again.
Hello? Is anyone there?
Kate heard her own voice enhanced through the speaker.
My name is Kate. What's yours?
Trevor. Kate gasped. The voice was rough, deep, and barely audible, but it was there. Luke was ecstatic. Yes, that's what I'm talking about! He cheered exuberantly, the way a football fan might cheer for his favorite team at the Super Bowl. Trevor, did you hear it?
I heard it,
she exclaimed.
Oh my God.
Go on, ask something else. Luke pressed the button and handed her the recorder.
Trevor? Who are you, Trevor?
She paused for a few seconds.
Is there anything you want to tell us?
She let the recorder run a little longer before handing it back to Luke. He rewound it. No response. He pressed record again. Trevor, what do you want with Kate and her brother? Are you following them? Again, nothing. Luke passed the recorder back over to Kate.
Why are you here?
Kate asked. Rewind. Play.
Why are you here?
Don't remember.
Don't remember!
Luke clapped his hands together. Did you hear that? That is an intelligent response! Kate thought it was cute the way he still got so excited about capturing a spirit voice, even after 5 years.
You don't remember why you're here?
She asked, pressing the record button. No response.
Is there anything we can do to help you?
Again, nothing. Are you the one making Kate's brother sick? Luke asked. Rewind. Play. Are you the one making Kate's brother sick? Maybe. The voice was the same, but it was much harsher than before. Violent. Menacing. Luke had been right. He was angry.
Why?
Kate asked. Won't tell you. Kate felt chills run down her spine again for the second time that night. She could see how a skeptic might pass off any voices they'd heard up until that point as static, a faulty connection to a radio, or even a glitch in the recording. That, however, was a direct response to a question she'd asked. It even sounded like he was mocking her. Luke, however, was absolutely giddy. "Oh, so that's how we're going to play, huh, Trevor? You want to be a smartass?" he asked. Kate stared at him, horrified.
"Don't make him mad. I still have to live here."
Luke ignored her. "Talk to us. Come on, use my energy. Use it all." Crash! Kate screamed. Luke leapt almost a foot off the couch. "Get the light," he told her, but Kate was shaking too hard to move. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened with a loud bang. "What the hell was that?" Gavin demanded. Kate could barely make out his shadowy figure stumbling around in the darkness. He switched on the overhead light, and Kate had to blink several times before her eyes adjusted. "Shit," Luke muttered. Kate looked over his shoulder to see his night vision camera, or what remained of it anyway, leaning up against the wall, still attached to the tripod. It had hit the wall with such force that bits and pieces had gone flying. It was only upon closer inspection that Kate noticed the damage done to the wall itself. "What the hell did you do?" Gavin demanded, staring at the hole in the wall. "Do you have any idea how much it's going to cost to fix that?"
"Gav, it wasn't us.
"Kate, I don't want to hear it," Gavin snapped. "I've had enough of this. You need to grow up," he hissed. To Luke, he said, "And you need to leave." "But we—" Luke started to protest, but Gavin cut him off. "Get out." Gavin wasn't as muscular as Luke, but he was much taller, and he could certainly be tough when he wanted to be. Luke, obviously not wanting to cause any trouble, grabbed his tripod and camera and stuffed them into his backpack. "I'll pay for the wall," he muttered to Kate. "We don't need your help. Get out," Gavin ordered.
"Sorry about your camera,"
Kate told Luke. He shrugged. "Wasn't one of my good ones." Kate couldn't tell if he was lying or not. She handed him his digital recorder. "Thanks for tonight," he told her and kissed her on the cheek. Gavin must have made a threatening move behind her back, because Luke took 2 steps backward and threw his hands up. "Hey, I'm going. See? I'm going." Seconds later, he was out the door. Kate and Gavin stood in a tense silence, neither seeming to want to look at the other. Finally, Kate said, "It wasn't his fault." "Kate, just stop talking."
"We didn't do that, Gavin. Something else did."
Gavin had clearly had enough, because without another word, without even acknowledging her, he turned and stormed back into his room. She knew she should just let him go, but she didn't want him to think he'd won.
"Don't you want to know what we caught?"
she called after him. Gavin turned and glared at her. "Stop talking," he snarled through gritted teeth. Stunned by the furious look on his face, Kate froze in her tracks. Gavin disappeared into his bedroom, slamming the door in the process. Kate winced. If Trevor really was there, she hoped that he would keep his haunting to a minimum once the lights went out, because she had a feeling she wouldn't be welcome in her brother's room, no matter how scared she felt.